Hey Merfolk fans, Joe here. Thanks very much for joining me. Today I've got a replay of a match against my friend Rich. He is a bit of a brewer, and this is one of his lists. It's a Naya deck playing Eldritch Evolution and Nahiri the Harbinger. So let's have a look at the opening hands. Rich has 2 lands and Noble Hierarch. That'll make for a turn 3 Kitchen Finks. He's going to want to hit one more mana source though to get access to turn 3 4 drops. Probably Pia and Kieran first, and then follow up with Nahiri with some blockers in play. If he gets up to 5 mana, he's going to be able to play Goblin Dark Dwellers. This is a card that had a brief time in the spotlight in Jund decks that were testing it out, but don't see too much of it these days. 5 mana is quite a lot. 4/4 Menace is pretty good stats, and it lets you cast an instant or sorcery up to 3 or less mana cost from your graveyard when it enters the battlefield. So all around, great value, but currently doesn't really have a comfortable home in Modern. Rich testing him out here in this deck. On my side of the table, pretty obviously an easy keep. 3 lands, 2 Silvergills, Reejerey, and Master of Waves. Strong stuff. Let's see how it went. Rich is on the play, having won the die roll, and is going to open with Fast Land into Noble Hierarch. I drew a Spreading Seas, which I'm always happy to see against green-white decks. Play Oboro and pass. There is Rich's 4th mana source right on time. Gonna pay 3 life to fetch and shock, and we're gonna see that turn 2 Kitchen Finks. For my second draw, it looks like I hit a Reejerey. That's my second Reejerey, and pretty easy choice for me this turn to go with Silvergill rather than Spreading Seas. Develop my own board presence while drawing a card. Looks like Rich is hitting his land drops, and not just that, but also ramping. So not quite sure that mana denial is the route to take here. Play Silvergill and reveal Silvergill. Draw into my 4th land, which I feel pretty good about. I do have this Master of Waves in hand. Rich draws a second Kitchen Finks, and this turn with access to 4 mana, as I mentioned, he's probably going to choose to run out Pia and Kieran ahead of Nahiri. I'll take 4 off of the Exalted Kitchen Finks, go down to 16, and we'll see what Rich does. Follows up with Pia and Kieran, gets 2 Thopters, pretty solid blockers. For my turn, I draw Harbinger, so just still hitting great stuff. I've got way too much gas in my hand. I need to figure out what to do. Now, paying 3 and getting Reej on the board seems like a pretty good option typically with 3 mana, but with these Thopters on the table, Reejerey just dies to that. So for me, it's pretty obvious value just to bounce the Kitchen Finks. I'll do that time and time again if the opponent lets me. 2 life is not really much for Merfolk to have to deal with. Each turn, our damage output kind of grows exponentially between adding extra Lords and especially Master of Waves, bringing a ton of elementals with him. 3 mana, if the opponent wants to play out Kitchen Finks, is a really big tempo swing in our favor. We're establishing 2 more Blue Devotion, slowing the opponent's clock down, and just generally reducing the potency of his board. It doesn't use our mana as efficiently as possible, but as I mentioned, Reejerey is just dead on board to Pia and Kieran's Thopter, so Rich probably not likely to to use all of his mana to sacrifice a Thopter and get rid of one of these 2 creatures. So I felt safer running out Harbinger at this point. Rich probably going to devote his mana to more important things than removing one of these 2 2-drops. And in fact, we see him play out Nahiri, and then mistakenly, I think he draws before he discards. Not a big deal, but we'll see. He drew an Eldritch Evolution, has to pitch something now, so discards Voice of Resurgence. Did that backwards. I didn't say anything about it during the game, but I think I did notice it. Passes back to me. I draw a 5th land. It's a Mutavault, so I'm not particularly unhappy about seeing that. With so much gas in hand, it didn't really matter what we drew at that point. Now, going into turn 4 with our 4th land drop, a pretty typical decision-making process we have to go through is whether to play out 2 2-drops or a single Master of Waves. And in this case, I think it's pretty easy to play out Spreading Seas and potentially Silvergill Adept, drawing us 2 cards while continuing to develop our board. The real option here, I think, is going to be play Spreading Seas, potentially draw into an Island Walk Lord, cast that guy, and swing at Nahiri for 6 just to take that Planeswalker off the table right away. So definitely want to play the Mutavault, get the Manland on board so he can attack as early as next turn. I choose to hit the Firelit Thicket. At this point, Rich only has access to, well, he has potentially access to 3 red if he taps Sacred Foundry and then filters green into Firelit Thicket for 2 more red. By hitting the Firelit Thicket, he can no longer filter green into red and will just be stuck on the single red source. We see that that is important because he has a Goblin Dark Dwellers in hand, which is currently uncastable with the mana that he has available on the table. So the hope was playing Spreading Seas to draw and hit an Island Walk Lord. Instead, I just hit another Mutavault. Not unhappy to hit that. It seems like any card that I could draw at this point is just gas. So instead, I'll follow up with the Silvergill now, reveal Reejerey, and drew into another Harbinger. So again, it's all gas at this point. No real good attacks into these Thopters, so just pass back to Rich. Untaps and draws a Birds of Paradise. That's pretty slow mana at this point, but better than no mana, I guess. Tap 3 for Kitchen Finks, gain 2 more life. As I mentioned, the difference between 19 and 21 is virtually negligible for us. Rich making full use of his mana this turn. We see the Kitchen Finks and the Birds of Paradise. Have a feeling he's probably going to tick Nahiri up at this point. He has nothing to exile, really. I guess he could exile the Spreading Seas if he wanted to. I had somebody comment on my thread. I mentioned before that Nahiri can exile Spreading Seas, and the person commenting mentioned that she can't exile Spreading Seas because it never gets tapped. Well, for that reason, Nahiri doesn't say exile target tapped enchantment. She just says exile target enchantment. And then she cares if artifacts are tapped or creatures are tapped. But as far as enchantments go, they tend to not be tapped. So it'd be pretty stupid if it said exile target tapped enchantment. So she could, in fact, get rid of the Spreading Seas. Not sure if that's valuable enough for Rich at this point. I think going for something like Emrakul is probably better with this army of blockers he has up at this point. He's just crossing his fingers and hoping that I don't draw into an Island Walk Lord. So he is going to discard first this time, I think. He discards the Goblin Dark Dwellers and then draws into a Plains, which I'm sure he's probably pretty happy about. Needs a little bit more mana this game. Still doesn't have access to double red. I guess that's why he pitched the Goblin Dark Dwellers. A little bit of a misstep here. He swings with 2 Thopter tokens with a Noble Hierarch on the board. He could have just swung with 1 with Exalted and done the same amount of damage. Drew into a Silvergill. So plenty of options at this point, but the one that seems the most appealing to me... Well, first of all, I want to deal with Nahiri, right? He's got 2 blockers up right now, and I don't really have excellent attacks into those blockers. If, however, I play out a Reejerey after playing another land, cast my second Harbinger, tap and bounce the Kitchen Finks, I'm then attacking into his Nahiri with 9 power, with only a Pia and Kirin as a blocker. Now, he's going to be really reluctant to trade his 4-drop legendary creature for one of my lowly 2-drop Merfolk. So if I swing at Nahiri, he's probably not going to block, and I'll get her off the table right away. So I will play my second Manland. Going to see Mutavault. Tap 3 lands for Merrow Reejerey. Tap the Harbinger, tap the Finks, bounce that guy. Rich might gain 2 more life, but as you see, my Merfolk army is getting a little bit out of control here. Swing at Nahiri for 9. My army's being buffed by Reejerey now, and she's dead. So another compelling reason to not block with Pia and Kirin is that he can sacrifice a Thopter to get rid of my Lord. It seems like a pretty good option, making solid use of this 4 mana 2/2. Really want to use that ability whenever possible. So Rich drew more mana in the form of Wall of Roots. You see, he still has this Eldritch Evolution in hand. Wonder if he's going to use that soon. Taps green and blue and plays Wall of Roots. What's the follow-up? So thinks twice about that. But then ultimately, all right, he likes the Wall of Roots. So puts a counter on it to make green mana. And then taps white and blue to play out that Kitchen Finks again. It's going to go up from 21 to 23. Again, the difference between 19, 21, and 23 doesn't really matter to us. I think Rich realized at this point that he should have probably just swung with one Thopter last time, does so this time. That Thopter probably would have been pretty handy as a blocker against my attack last turn when I killed Nahiri. So he's passing with 2 mana up. Actually, no, 3 mana. He pauses on my upkeep. It's a pretty solid play. Makes red mana with Birds of Paradise, and it's going to get rid of Reejerey before he can tap and untap a bunch of stuff. So sack the Thopter, kill the Reejerey. Solid play by Rich. For my turn, looks like I drew an Island Walk Lord. A pretty strong option is just to run out that Island Walk Lord and swing for a bunch. I can play a land and then a Reejerey for a Lord. Just see, rather than just calculate it all at this point, let's just see what the play was. I definitely had to think about it a little while. Whenever Reejerey is involved, and so many lands with so many creatures in hand, do have to spend a little bit of time thinking. Alright, so open with the Cavern of Souls. Well, it is easy to do a little bit of math before we see what the plays end up being. If I just play out an Island Walk Lord with 2 mana, activate both Mutavaults with the other 2 mana, I have 6 base 2-power creatures being buffed by an Island Walk Lord, so swinging for 6 times 3, 18, taking Rich down to 5. So it seems like a powerful option, but I think we can do better. So I'll play Reejerey, cast Silvergill. Okay, so going for the full value line here. Reveal the Island Walk Lord. Draw into an AEther Vial. I'm going to play out the Island Walk Lord, untap a land, and go to attacks. At this point, I've got double buffs. So swinging with Island Walk for 4 times 4, 16. Pretty close to that 18 I mentioned earlier in the line with just playing the single Island Walk Lord. Rich is just going to take the 16 because I'm on Island Walk. He goes from 23 down to 7. Follow up with AEther Vial. So just kind of an unstoppable hand right now. I mean, Rich has some good stuff going on his side of the board. He's got repeated removal with Pia and Kieran, which just got a lot worse when I played out my second Lord. I might have mentioned this already, but unfortunately AEther Vial, for whatever reason, I reinstalled Cockatrice. Image is just not showing up, so this is a proxied AEther Vial. I don't know that Rich really has a way out of this at this point. Starts by putting a counter on Wall of Roots. Taps green and blue, and gonna go with Eldritch Evolution on the Kitchen Finks. So he gets to get a, let's see, I think a 5-drop or less. Gets a Murderous Red Cap, targeting my Island Walk Lord, and is then gonna finish him off with the Thopter. So he'll go ahead and attack for 2 with Exalted. Pretty good line by Rich. Gets rid of the Island Walk Lord, taking me off of Island Walk. Passes the turn, but if we just do a quick analysis of our board state, if we activate both Mutavaults, he's got 5 blocks counting the Hierarch. So if he just straight up blocks our 5 biggest guys, it's like a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. He's still taking 8, so he could potentially live, especially if he has a Path to Exile or 2 in his hand. So we can't just activate and swing out this turn. We have to respect Rich's creatures. However, drawing into a second Island Walk Lord is pretty much just the win right there. I can play him, untap a land, play Master of Ways, untap a land, get in with Mutavault and an army of Island Walkers. So just thought a second, tried to figure out exactly what Rich could have, what I should be playing around. Going to cast the Lord, untap the Wanderwine Hub. Rich just scooped it up at that point. So solid game 1 for the Merfolk. Though Rich's Eldritch Evolution deck seemed to pretty much work according to plan. Alright, so I drew my opening hand. I'm waiting for Rich. We can take a quick look at ours. It's an easy mulligan, 6 lands and a Spreading Seas, but we're going to wait for the person on the play to declare whether he wants to keep or not before making a mulligan. So I mulligan to 6, and being on the draw with a Scry and an AEther Vial and a Silvergill in the opening hand, I like this quite a lot. So it's risky, but I'm playing against Rich, and I'm already up a game. So I guess by saying I'm playing against Rich, I'm saying I'm playing against a friend, so potentially doesn't matter as much, but I think I probably would have kept this hand in a competitive situation anyway. I get the Scry, and I'm on the draw. Going to 5 is probably not going to be as potentially powerful as this. I did, however, see a Master of the Pearl Trident on the top, so now I only have one chance to draw into a land in order to get Aether Vial on turn 1. Looking at Rich's opening hand, which we didn't really do yet, he's got a Forest and a Copperline Gorge. Birds of Paradise ramps him to turn 2 Kitchen Finks again. If he draws into another land, he's got a turn 3 Huntmaster. So pretty powerful stuff, along with Path to Exile for removal. Things looking pretty good for Rich. Didn't hit my land. Pass it back. Rich surprised that I kept the no-lander. Draws into more mana. It's a little slow, but actually a little awkward. I guess he chooses to press his advantage here. Probably would have been smarter, I think, to play out Birds of Paradise there. I don't know. Could have gone either way. I didn't play a land on turn 1, so I don't know if he feels too bad about that. I hit an island on my second draw step, so pretty decent, actually. If he has Kazali Pride Mage in the deck, I mean, if he draws into an Eldritch Evolution, he can sack a Kitchen Finks or a Birds, get that guy, and blow up my Aether Vial. We see he does draw into an Eldritch Evolution. Not sure if he has the Kazali Pride Mage in the deck or not. Looks like he just plays the Birds of Paradise and swings for 3 with the Kitchen Finks that he played out last turn. Drew into a second land. This is actually going quite well. You know, sometimes it's in our best interest to keep borderline mulligans because we do have the benefit of the scry now that the mulligan rule has changed. And being on the draw, we get to see more cards, especially if we have a flexible card like Silvergill, and especially if we have an Aether Vial. You know, I don't think I would ever keep a 0-land hand if I didn't have the Aether Vial. But being on the draw with the scry, with an Aether Vial, with the Silvergill, you know, it was a workable 6. If I drew 0 lands for 4 turns in a row, I would have just died. But you saw I whiffed once and then hit 2 lands in a row. So we can develop our board, play a Silvergill, reveal Reejerey, and draw into even more gas with an Island Walk Lord. That'll combo well with our Spreading Seas. So for Rich's turn, we see that he draws into another Birds of Paradise. So I guess he's got a choice between whether to play something like Kitchen Finks, leaving up mana for Path to Exile, or Kitchen Finks and probably more correctly playing out Birds of Paradise to keep increasing his access to mana and developing his board, increasing his ability to sort of stay on curve. But I think we're going to see Huntmaster here now. I mean, Rich is way out ahead of me at this point, and Huntmaster, if that guy flips, then he's going to start picking off my creatures. So reasonable play, though with Rich on 2 lands, and missing land drops, I think I would have played out Kitchen Finks and Birds there. Rich is going to swing for 3, and we're not in a position to block at this point. Aether Vial is going to get Cursecatcher on the board, and getting that beautiful double curve going with Aether Vial and my lands at this point. Drew into a second Kira, which is, you know, pretty clunky. It's the reason why I refuse to play 2 Kiras in the main deck. But I have brought in a second Kira from the sideboard, because she does such great work in the matchups where she's useful. So in one of those spots where a little bit clunky with both in hand. Got a few choices here. I can choose to Vapor Snag the Huntmaster and set Rich back an entire turn, but he's going to keep cracking in with his Kitchen Finks. We're not hitting our land drop this turn. Seems like a better option would be to play out the Spreading Seas, take him off of one of his lands. I mean, he still gets to tap it for mana, and he's got Birds to fix his colors, but at least I'll turn Island Walk on for the future and keep drawing spells. So I think I went ahead with the Spreading Seas line here. I drew into another Island Walk Lord, so in a similar position to last game where I just had like more gas than I can even deal with in hand. Really want to hit another land. Do have access to Island Walk here, so we can use Aether Vial to put in an Island Walk Lord and start swinging. Not feeling particularly threatened by Rich's board, especially given all the power that I have sitting in my hand. Again, Reejerey, if we take Aether Vial up to 3 next turn, will allow us to cast our second Island Walk Lord, untap Aether Vial, and bring in Kira. Really showing, I think, the power of Reejerey in this deck in combination with Aether Vial especially. You know, a lot of people cut back on Reejereys. A lot of people think that we don't want a lot of 3-drops, but we do have Aether Vial, and if you run 20 lands, you tend to hit your 3rd land drop on time. I think most of the time, this guy is at least as powerful as our Island Walk Lords. So swung for 5. Rich went from 24 down to 19. And we see he doesn't hit a land. Instead, he hits Revelark, which as a 5-drop could have benefited from Rich playing out that Birds of Paradise last turn. So I think a little greedy running with that Huntmaster, and I'm starting to catch up with his AEther Vial here. A lot of choices. He can go with Eldritch Evolution. I imagine that Revelark is a singleton in the deck, in which case he probably would have done something like swing with the Huntmaster and the Wolf and the Sphinx, and then second main phase, he could Eldritch Evolution the Huntmaster, bring a Revelark into play, and then once the Revelark leaves the battlefield, he can actually get back Huntmaster from the graveyard. Huntmaster is one of the best creatures in combination with Revelark, because Revelark cares about the power of the creatures in the graveyard. It needs to be 2 or less. Huntmaster is a 4-drop with 2 power, and Pia and Kira Nalar is actually also a 2/2 4-drop. So really powerful targets to bring back with Revelark. But since Revelark's only a singleton in the deck, I imagine, having it in hand kind of clunks up the potential line that I was just describing with sacking the Huntmaster. So with Rich having access to 4 mana, let's see what he chooses to do this turn. He does have a Path to Exile. But if he passes the turn, he gets to just destroy my Lord of Atlantis with a Huntmaster, Ravager trigger. But if he takes that line, then I could always flash in an Island Walk Lord to buff the Lord. If he tried to, then he could cast Path to Exile in response. So some pretty spicy lines open for Rich. Let's see which direction he took it. Attacks for 5 between the Kitchen Finks and the Wolf. I'm not going to block with my Lord. Taps 3 for Eldritch Evolution, and he's going to target the Kitchen Finks. So, yeah, we're going to see the Murderous Redcap getting rid of the Lord. Plays out his Birds of Paradise. Yeah, seems like a good line to take. Keeps me off Island Walk. Keeps my creatures small. He did tap out, though, so I am going to get to tick AEther Vial up and just kind of go bananas with Merrow Reejerey. Drew into another Island Walk Lord. Things just getting better and better. So Reejerey, play an Island Walk Lord, untap AEther Vial, and with Rich tapped out, I'm going to go ahead and get that Cure Shield active. Alright, so Island Walk reestablished. I'm at 9 life, and with Rich's board growing, especially with the threat of Ravager throwing 2 damage at my face and bringing a 4/4 Trampler to the board, I have to proceed with caution. I think rather than attacking with both the Silvergill and the Cursecatcher, especially since my board is just going to sort of multiply next turn with the extra Island Walk Lord and the Vapor Snag trimming down his board, I can get by just swinging with the Silvergill this turn. Rich goes from 21 down to 17. Going to untap. Finally draws that 3rd land. And so has plenty of options this turn. Chooses just to pass. He gets the flip trigger for the Ravager. He does have Path to Exile up. So let's see how this went. On my upkeep, Huntmaster flips. Ravager throws 2 damage at my Island Walk Lord, and then that gets countered by Kira. And then he's going to cast Path to Exile. So I had to think for a second because I was wondering if there was some moment where I could have brought in the second Kira to reestablish the shield. But after the Ravager trigger goes, targets the Lord, the shield has been broken. If I activate AEther Vial representing another Kira, of course Rich could just respond at instant speed by casting Path, and the Lord would go away anyway. So nothing I could really do about that. He's got plenty of mana to pay for Cursecatcher, and I don't have any other counterspell effects in my hand. So that guy's going to get exiled. So fast forwarding, I was just thinking about whether the whole Ravager trigger gets countered by Kira's ability. Actually, you know what? Thinking back on it, this is one trigger that goes on the stack. It says whenever this creature transforms, you deal 2 damage to target opponent and 2 damage to up to 1 creature that player controls. And Kira is countering that ability. So I shouldn't take 2 damage. I think I did during the game, because I didn't really think through it. I had the inclination that Kira would just counter the ability, and of course she should. But I guess I got into thinking about like similar cards, similar effects, like with multiple targets. Like if you counter one of Electrolyze's targets, let's see. No, Electrolyze would get countered as well. So I think this effect should have just been countered there. Anyhow, I took 2, and my Island Walk Lord gets dealt with. Did take a second to think about it. Again, you know, I have a second Kira in hand, so it could potentially get tricky, I guess. But get a land off the Path to Exile and go into my main phase. Drawn to a Master of Waves. That's a ton of power. So, you know, Kira potentially useful here because if I use her to block, then I can flash in the second Kira, and the first Kira will just go away, and I'll just effectively... hold on a sec. Yeah, I have potentially some tricks with Kira. I've got the AEther Vial on 3, and I've got the Kira in hand, so let's see how it goes. I'm going to use my 2 mana to play my Island Walk Lord, and then untap an island, so I have mana up for AEther Vial. Sorry, AEther Vial, Vapor Snag. Plenty of attacks available, but my health is getting pretty low, my life total. What attack should we make here? Alright, so looks like between Vapor Snag, Kira blocks with another Kira being replaced, then Master of Waves can come in with AEther Vial next turn. We'll have plenty of Devotion. Let's see. Alright, choosing to swing out here. So I think it is 10 damage. So Rich goes from 17 down to 7. And I'll pass the turn with Vapor Snag up here. So Rich is effectively at 6 because of this Vapor Snag. So looking at Rich's hand, we see he doesn't have access to removal. Just has this Murderous Redcap. I'm at 7. He's got a 4/4 Trampler. Let's see if I had no effects. What was he presenting here? I can block a Wolf. I can block a Kitchen Finks. I'm going to be taking 2 + 4 for 1. It's not lethal. But then potentially he's got birds up for blocks. Gonna play a Kitchen Finks and gain some life. Yeah, I don't know that Rich had many other options in this situation. So we see I do have a Vapor Snag. So I'll get rid of that Ravager. I'm gonna choose to block the Kitchen Finks with my Island Walk Lord. Kitchen Finks is a 2/1. My Lord is a 3/3, so that's an easy block to make. Now, representing here that I'm going to trade with the red cap, and then Rich can throw one damage at my face, so I would take 4 and 2 and 1 for 7. It's kind of unnecessary, just a little showy. I could have just blocked the Wolf. In any event, I wasn't going to actually let Kira trade with something, because if she traded, and I activated AEther Vial when I got priority at the end of the damage step, then with AEther Vial's trigger on the stack, or activation on the stack, Rich could have Path to Exile something if he had a removal spell in hand. As it went, I'm just going to declare my blockers and then activate AEther Vial. And with the legendary rule, let me pause for a sec, because I'm just going to bounce the Ravager first. Order doesn't really matter here, but as I mentioned, Rich is going to go from 7 down to 6. Then I'm going to activate AEther Vial, bring in the second Kira, and sort of make a seamless transition with her effect on the board. The legendary rule blows her up, and the damage assigned by Murderous Redcap will just go down to 0, and the Redcap will live, so it won't assign me any damage. So I'm just going to take 2 from the Wolf, and then I've got sort of, I think, Overkill on the crackback. So I take 2, and then Rich has some options. he said just good game. Let's see. If he played out Kitchen Finks and Noble Hierarch, well, no. I guess the point comes back to him not having removal again. So he can't flip Huntmaster right away. And there's no way, I think, for him to get rid of the Spreading Seas right now. So I had Island Walk for lethal, so he just conceded at that point. So thanks for watching, guys. This was Rich's Naya Eldritch Evolution deck. Let me know your guys' thoughts. I think one of the main interactions is Eldritch Evolution for Revelarch, getting back value 2/2s like Huntmaster of the Fells and Pia and Kieran Nalaar. It's a pretty fun deck, but we managed to take the match in 2 games. Actually, it's important to note in the second game, to be a little bit immodest, that I did win on a 0 land opening hand. It doesn't happen that often, so it's kind of nice when it does. Please just leave any comments you might have, subscribe if you haven't already, and I will see you guys in the next video. Thank you very much.